Hi, welcome back to this video series. We're talking about Centrify support for container Linux. In the previous video, we talked about what's different in this particular version, given that this is a hardened version of the operating system with some changes. In this video, we're going to talk about the AD integration and access control capabilities provided by Centrify. As you have expected over the years, you typically want best of breed AD integration. And one of the cool things is, for example, when you join a system, in this case CoreOS to Active Directory, is going to show just like a Windows machine in AD, right? Not only that, it's going to show the same way in the Centrify consoles as well. And what are the benefits? The benefits right away are that you can establish centralized administration. What that means is, for example, I can have a user, in this case called Bart, right? Bart is able to log into this container Linux system. However, if I were to, let's just say, disable him in Active Directory, right? I'm going to go ahead and disable it, and I'm going to try to duplicate this session, right? So Bart, and in here, because the user has been disabled in AD, he doesn't have the ability to log in, right? So this allows you to basically have a directory or record, in this case Active Directory, and you'll have a ripple effect across your apps, devices, and in this case your systems, regardless of where they are, either on premise or in the cloud, right? Another benefit that we have is access control, right? So, a user, because they exist in Active Directory, doesn't necessarily mean that they're authorized to access the system. For example, I have a user here, right, as administrator. Even if this user is a valid user in AD, because he's not authorized through Centrify RBAC, they won't be able to log in, right? Another thing that we're going to be doing very actively is that we're going to provide audit trail. What that means is that if you have, Splunk, ArcSight, logarithm, anything that can consume syslog, you'll be able to enrich your security operations with a Centrify audit trail. In this particular case, because the system is in AWS, you could use AWS CloudWatch as well to create metrics, alarms, etc. Another component of access control is authorization. In the case of Unix Linux, we're talking about privilege elevation, and Centrify does provide Centrify enhanced sudo. What that means is that if an end user, for example, needs to be able to elevate, so in this case, if I wanted to do su, for example, dash here, my user will be challenged for their password and optionally for multi-factor to be able to do this. But if a user is not authorized to actually do this, let's just say Bart, Bart, and obviously we need to put the right path, so it's opt Centrify bin, right? And this you do. So notice that the user is not even allowed to do that. So you want to make sure that you provide powerful users with the roles that they need, but limit users to the least privilege or least access model. Another capability that you can implement with Centrify is identity assurance. Let's just say this system for a second was supporting PCI data. So PCI 3.2 came out with the need for identity assurance in the forms of multi-factor authentication. So I have, for example, a user, Lisa. So Lisa needs access to the system, this container Linux system. But in her case, she's going to be challenged. I have an authentication profile that requires email or SMS or a phone call. I'm going to pick SMS, right? And what's going to happen here is I have two options. I could go old school and type in the code, or I could just use the provided workflow capability that is in here. And once I accept it and approve it, I will be placed automatically in there once I prove that, and I don't need to actually type in the code. This is great because you don't need to compromise usability to get the additional security capabilities. So again, best of breed AD integration, access control, right? Only people who are authorized can access systems, and privilege elevation with flexibility to require multi-factor if needed as well. Now that we have all those controls in place, what is the next part? How do we make sure that the operational efficiencies are in place? So if I was an IT admin, I don't want to have to drop everything I'm doing to provide evidence that my controls are in place. This is where Centrify excels because we provide the ability for you to, let's just say, to quickly inspect who has access to a system. So notice here, I can look at, for example, Lisa. I can see her Unix identity, what roles does she have, you know, how was this role assigned, what are the, how can she access the system, and what commands she can run, right? Very simple way to inspect that. I have PowerShell as well, Tickle AD Edit, but at the same time, I also have report services. So report services allows me to delegate the ability for people to generate reports on who has access to what. So if you notice here, notice Bart, he belongs to all these AD groups here. He can log in only to 2 machines. This is the role, right? And it was assigned to a group called Unix users. Really quickly to provide this information, you can also export it, right? So, if you have a security operations team that needs to get an email with this information, you can get that done as well. So what we're trying to do here is making sure that security controls are easily demonstrable and they don't affect your cadence, right? Your productivity. You're focused on your DevOps. You're focused on making sure your systems are running fine. Another capability, and we're going to make a video around this, is analytics. So with Centrify now, we can provide insights of what's been going on in your environment now, but now using machine learning. What this means is that depending on the dimension that I want to take a look at, I can look at what's been going on in my environment. I can look at a heat map of what commands, for example, notice DC do, PAM access, Windows activities, right? I can take a look and drill into those and, get a pivot of, heat maps of where events have been happening, days of the week, times, and even the detail, right, of what's been going on in my environment. So this contributes to create basically a risk profile. So with using Centrify conditional access, more on that later, you can add an additional dimension for access and privilege elevation. So a lot of cool stuff, right, in this release, and we're going to be talking about it in the next videos.